All right. It is 4 o'clock, so the January 16th, 2024 Nantucket Board of, what's that?
25.
25. Yes, 25. Meeting is now open. Just to remind everyone that the meeting is being audio and visually recorded. Are there any public comments on any item that is not on the agenda? I see no one in the room. Is there any hands up?
Yeah, there is. Okay, you can go, Megan.
Thank you very much. It's a little bit hard to hear you guys. I don't know if you could talk into the mic a little bit more. And then I was just checking to see if you will allow public comment on the agenda item regarding PFAS.
I didn't quite get that.
Will we allow public comment on the PFAS?
Yes.
So that.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll wait till then.
Anyone else?
No, that looks like it.
Okay, and also just since we do have one member on Zoom, I just want to make sure, Carrie, that we can hear you.
Yeah, am I coming through loud and clear?
No, you're doing fine. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, approval of minutes for December. Any comments, suggestions? Just one related to water sports. It does say the camp schedule to present the select board of January 9th. It was more like it was possible that it would be January 9th.
Oh, okay.
All right. Any other corrections? Do I have a motion with that one edit for approval?
Motion to approve with the edit.
Second.
All in favor by roll call, Carrie,
Aye.
Meredith,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
James.
Yes.
Chairman votes aye, minutes are approved. PFAS update. There's been a lot of discussion, lots of emails, phone calls. And it's time every now and then that this board sort of get updated as what's going on in the town and the state and anything we can do.
So Greg, I believe is on Tivnan, and he will be providing or leading the update. Greg, whenever you're ready.
Right, and also we will take public comments, and I want to kind of limit the entire discussion to about a half an hour, because we could probably go on till breakfast. Okay, welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Chair, did you want public comment now? Is that what you're asking for, or?
Let's get an update and then.
Okay. Perfect. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Greg Tivnan. Most of you know me. I'm the assistant town manager. I have presented to this body in the past. Not the most recent hasn't been since June 22nd, 2024, regarding PFAS. So my task has been assigned by the Director of Public Health is to give an update of the town's efforts regarding PFAS. I'm the non-scientific person here. I'm the lay person who's just been in charge of, coordinating everything, as you guys know. So this evening we do have with us the town's new environmental contaminant administrator, Andrew Shapiro. He is in the public health office. He's just a couple of weeks new, and he knows a lot more about PFAS and other contaminants than I do. And we also have with us Chuck Larson, who's the town's senior project manager, who has been working alongside me since 2020 regarding our PFAS assessments. And we also have, for the sake of this meeting, Mark Willett, the water department manager. So leading into it, just to update that when the airport was noticed, I received a notice of response for action in 2019 regarding the emission of known emission of firefighting foam, AFFF, on their property. We were notified by the airport manager and the assistant airport manager that this was happening. That was in October of 2019. In December of 2019, they did receive their notice. So the town, through the town manager, coordinated like uh, an internal body to understand what is PFAS. I personally had never heard of it, and what the town may need to do to start better understanding this and what actions we can take to better protect and serve the public. We had our first meeting in January of 2020 and started putting together a scope of hiring some professional services to help us with this. Then, of course, COVID happened. And so we had a bit of a hiatus between March and say about June of 2020. But when we got back on track, we did hire our first contract with CDM Smith out of Boston to assist us with um, an initial assessment of potential sources of PFAS in municipal facilities around the island, and then what those potential receptors may be. So in 2020, we had our first assessment started and completed, which led to the creation of what we call the Nantucket PFAS cycle. That is in your material that I sent you. Oh, I should have said too, not knowing what to put together, and as the chair said, this could have gone on for days. I just put together like a 3 or 4 page summary of what we've been doing. That's in your packet, and I'm assuming is online. The PFAS cycle is in there, and that is it's very complex. And we took that cycle, we discussed it with the board, and based on our understanding of potential sources and receptors of PFAS on the island from municipal sources, we started developing more projects to better understand what's coming in, is there PFAS, and how we may be able to mitigate it. So since then, the town has appropriated, so since 2020, about 15 million, not about, exactly $15 million to allocate amongst different departments to better understand, to create contracts to better understand what's happening in their particular source area. So in your packet, I do have a list of the funding, the fiscal years, the amounts, whether they're borrowing or free cash, if that's of interest to you, and as well as a larger one, which I'll get to in a second, which was the installation of a water main expansion west of the airport, which we took on voluntarily, but we were very fortunate to receive $8.3 million in a state zero interest loan. So also in your packet are a list of all of the contracts that are related to PFAS that the town has been engaged with since 2020, fiscal year 21. And I believe if you count them all up, there's 23 now. Now, this has been a lot of ongoing work. And so as Chuck and I were tasked with doing this, for lack of a better place, well, I should have mentioned that when the town manager put together our internal PFAS group, it was myself, Chuck Larson, the project manager, the director of public health at the time, Roberto, the assistant airport manager at the time, and I think, and Mark Willett, the water manager. And that's we just started to understand PFAS. We realized that we needed some help. So we created a position called the Environmental Contaminant Administrator for the Public Health Office to assist with us. And you guys may remember Mike Maynard, who filled that position first, but he did retire a few months ago. And he was great, and we miss him, but he really helped us quite a bit. So some of the projects, again, I like to stress that we're doing investigative work to better understand. We did allocate some money to try to help eliminate PFAS at the source or the receptor, and I'll talk about that in a second. But some of the major projects that are going on right now, which is page 3 of your handout, is currently a project that's not from the town or initiated by the town, but really supported by the town, is the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection's assessment for potential PFAS sources at the 246 Fairgrounds campus, where you guys are right now. That we were noticed by DEP on July 22nd that they're intending to do a site investigation, and we've been open door since. We've created a website, a web page with all the information as up to date as we can be. We've been very supportive of them coming in. DP hired a firm called Verdantas Environmental Engineering to come in and do the well testing. They have since then come in and installed the wells and have sampled, have done conducted 28 samples of the through the 12 wells. And I don't want to get bogged down in it, but today we actually received the first report back. And I know Mr. Larson will be able to update you better on that, but no, we have not had time to really go through it. But I know he's spent a little time this afternoon to go through it. So we're excited that we actually have our first report back. Um, Another big project that we'll be working on is the potential PFAS in the public water supply. We have on the phone on the Zoom Mark Willett to explain further. But PFAS has been detected in well 15, which is one of the offline wells in the Wannacomet system. Um, this was discovered by Wannacomet through their routine sampling, which they do regularly. They had suspicion that there was PFAS in that well. So as I said, Mr. Willett can explain it even better because I'm not an engineer. They turned off other wells that are shared in that aquifer area and to isolate it down to well 15. So the town or the water company is not under any sort of notice from DEP. We're not under any sort of instruction. The well has been turned off anyway since I believe 2022 by Mr. Willett because of potential concerns, but it can be turned on at any time and, and it can be blended. But before we get to that, we'll just continue on. But in your material is also the samples results from the last October sampling, October, November, that was provided to us by Wannacomet. Other projects that we've been working on, in addition to our ongoing assessment of PFAS at potential sources, municipal sources, we created our own materials handling and protocol um, report and well, basically our own protocols. We want to make sure that our public employees are safe if they are handling known contaminants. We worked on that with CDM Smith. We are currently engaged in a groundwater sampling program at the landfill. Now, this one is the only one that the town has asked DEP to be a part of. And it goes back to 2019, actually, before we started getting involved with PFAS. And the town submitted our own request to DEP to create a sampling program. Uh, DEP did not get back to us very quickly, but they did. And we are working with them on this project right now. So the sampling has just started this past fiscal year, this current fiscal year, excuse me, this past calendar year. And we are also working with another firm called Sanborn Head to help better understand the results of the sampling. Now, DEP has been very involved with this one, and they've been great partners, and they're helping us determine where to sample and what could come next. So that's an ongoing program. We have our new contract with that is just being engaged. Um, we have an on-call PFAS contract with CDM Smith. It's proved pretty valuable. Something comes up that needs to be either a scientific journal or an EPA, something that needs to be better understood. We go to them so we can get some better scientific analysis and support. We have been engaged with sampling influent at the wastewater treatment facility we're in our third year now. This was a project that was born out of the PFAS cycle and identifying PFAS in the wastewater treatment facility and trying to identify where it's coming in and where it's coming out. Through this study, we also allocated through town meeting $2.5 million to potentially have a pilot project for some technology to eliminate the PFAS, destroy it. at that source. So the influent testing is leading towards that. It's a lot more complex and way over my head, but it's called foam fractionation, and that is what we're looking to do. And by all accounts, our foam is pretty ripe for it. And I know it has a lot to do with long chain and short chain PFAS and what we can do, and it's looking pretty ripe. So we may have another full year of sampling before we try to embark on that $2.5 million project. So that was actually the next in line, which was it's called the PFAS destruction foam benchmark study. So that's what we're marching towards right now. So separate kind of from our whole PFAS efforts that we were working with CDM Smith and trying assessment, after the water company expanded the water by the airport as part of the airport's mitigation for the PFAS found from their AAA AFFF releases, we just thought ourselves, because there has been private wells sampled in that area that showed that there was PFAS, we just decided to expand the water system in that area west of the airport. It was fortuitous that the water company, had expanded the main, so spec this out and did it on our own. We did an expansion study to make sure there was enough capacity. We applied for state funding. We got an $8.3 million loan from the state. It's called SRF. And we also appropriated $9 million at town meeting in order to cover this. And it went pretty smoothly with everybody's help and assistance. And we were able to install the water main west of the airport. It was completed this time last year, roughly. As that was happening, there was the discovery of PFAS in the Tom's Way neighborhood of a little further west. And thankfully, through DEP, we were allowed to expand the SRF program in our unspended funding in order to utilize the resources we've already purchased to expand water main to that area. So that all happened concurrent. As a matter of fact, much of Tom's Way was done before the rest of the water expansion west of the airport. So we're very grateful for that. We're grateful for DEP for allowing us to do that. And the final one, which is not really a town-sponsored project, but something that the Board of Health has taken on, was to update the private well regulations, which took effect, I think, January 1st of last year. And I personally have not had a lot of input with that, but I here to support. Now, we did discuss this at our last June joint meeting with the select board, but that's something that the Board of Health has put together, and I know Mr. Hedden has a lot more information on that. That's my very armchair oversight of what we've been doing and all the contracts and the money that we have allocated towards PFAS. We do have another $1 million article for this meeting for PFAS, for any potential needs that may stem from the DEP study or anything else. And we also still have about $2 million unencumbered in the existing funds. So hopefully we're positioning ourselves to have funds readily available should we need them. There are several potential future projects that we're looking at and that are on your list. But in addition to that, with the addition of Andrew Shapiro to our team, we may want to start looking at more public health related studies and projects. And also on your form, on your material, is just all the times we've tried to come to the public or the select board or whoever to explain what we've been doing. So before I hand it over to maybe the water manager or to the project manager, are there any questions for me?
It's just questions from the board, and then I'd like to hear from Mark next. Any specific questions from the board at this point? Okay, and obviously, Mr. Willett, water is the big issue here.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, all my emails and phone calls deal with water.
Yeah, funny, mine too, every single one of them. Even more so now. As Greg said, through our routine sampling, we had a hit in well 15 late in the fourth quarter sampling of 2024. Got in contact with Mass DEP, took confirmatory samples to make sure that those lab results are real and true, and that well was over the 20-part limit. So it is off. It's been off for quite some time. When we found out about Tom's Way and everything that was going on, which is about 500 yards, 600 yards away from well 15 across Old South Road, out of abundance of caution, we turned 15 off. It's been a backup well anyway since about 2022, 21, 22. But this whole last year, we actually made it through the year without using 15. So when we found out the contamination was in it, we went out and sampled every one of our other wells, which is above and beyond the mandatory sampling. And fortunately, it's really that one well closest to the Tom's Way situation. Well 15 is in the upper aquifer, and well 16 is also in the upper aquifer. Our other wells are all in the deep aquifer below that semi-confining layer. And none of the deep wells or 16 have had a hit as to date. But we are currently in the process of working with Mass DEP and a consultant working on a design for a filter system for well 15, so we can filter that water, get it up and functioning before the summer season. That way we will have a backup well ready to go for the summer season. 15 and 16 are usually off all winter anyway, only used seasonally, and then the last few years only 15. We are also currently deep into the process of a new source approval, a new well that we're putting out at the North Pasture site off 43 Pulpus Road. All that information has been done and collected, and the water's been sampled, and the report and the hydrology and the drilling and the geophysics have all been put into a report, which is called a new source approval report, and has been submitted to DEP. They are currently reviewing that, and word back from them is maybe within a year we're going to get approval for that new source, and we'll be able to get that new well online, which will also help alleviate, using 15 and 16 if we needed to. But again, we're gonna work fast and hard this winter and have a filter system hopefully up and running on well 15 before the summer season.
Thank you. I mean, I'm anticipating that at some point, the federal EPA and the state will lower the limits. If we have lower limits, would there be other of your wells affected?
Every other well has come back as non-detected.
Good.
None at all.
Right, because,
But
yeah, go ahead.
That's to the current date of sampling. Can I promise that our wells will be safe forever? Nothing's forever, but I do think the geology and the hydrogeology of the island and the millions of dollars we've spent to study this, we are pretty fortunate to have that semi-confining layer that I think is helping keep the deeper aquifer a little bit safer than the upper. And I think that's why we're not seeing any contamination in those deeper wells. I think by treating 15 and having it ready as a backup well and ready to use it if we need to and treat that water, not only are we helping for a backup well just in case it's needed, I think that will also help in starting to clean up that plume that is in the Tom's Way area.
if we continue to expand the population of this island, will we have to go to other backup wells or more backup wells?
Well, once we get the one at North Pasture online, that can take place, and it will be a much bigger well. Well 15 and 16 are smaller wells that produce about 500 to 600 gallons a minute. Our deeper wells all produce close to 1,000 gallons a minute, and this new one that will be approved will be our biggest, deepest well. It's deeper than the rest. That will be at about 1,000 gallons a minute. So that'll be above all demand needs that we have. And we do have room under our permit to expand the system. But again, and I say this at a lot of meetings, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts owns the water resource. They control what I can pump through my water withdrawal permit. If we were over that permit, we would be fined and we would be in trouble. For us to increase that permit, we have to have meetings with them and discussions with them to increase that permit. So as we are right now, we have room in the permit for development. You know, we will get to the point where if we have to increase that permit and talk to DEP about using more of the Commonwealth's resource in the water, and that all has to be justified with them.
Right, well, that justification might be difficult, but that's for another day. Any other comments, questions from the board?
I have some questions.
Please, go right ahead.
So one, I'm wondering how deep well 15 and 16 are, and I'm thinking that if well 15 is off and well 16 is not that far away and they are close to Tom's Way, how often are you testing? Because I would think that well 16 would be ripe to be contaminated as well.
Correct. So well 15 and 16 are about 70 feet. They're in what we're calling the upper aquifer. Our aquifer has 3 layers, what we call the upper, which goes to about 80 to 85 feet. That's where most private wells are drilled, and that's where those 2 wells, 15 and 16, are drilled. At about 80, 85 feet, you run into a semi-confining layer that's a little bit tighter layer. That's about 10 feet thick, where we have found it. And below that, we call the middle aquifer, which goes from about 100 feet down to 200 feet. That's where the rest of our wells are. And below that, there's a very thick clay layer, a glacial lake deposit from Glacial Lake Nantucket that's close to 80 to 100 feet thick. Underneath that clay is another freshwater body. I don't think the availability to drill into that deep, deep aquifer would be permitted because there's no recharge beneath that clay. Nothing can get through it. So that would be like a true mining operation, and I don't know if the DEP would actually permit a mining operation for a water resource that's not recharged with rainfall. But well 15 and 16 are both in the upper aquifer. 16 is not next to, but not that far away from 15. So it's off this time of year anyway, and we've increased our sampling of all the wells in Wyers Valley, the 3 wells, 15, 16, and 12, to monthly sampling. We collected samples in December. We've already collected samples and sent them to the lab for January, and we will do them monthly for the foreseeable future.
So my other question is, from the Board of Health standpoint of health and safety, with all of the potential building that's going to be coming or is being discussed in other meetings, I have significant concerns. If we already have a contaminated well, we already have something saying the PFAS is in our aquifer. It's in the upper aquifer, but it is obviously in the aquifer. I mean, 55.5 parts per trillion is not insignificant. That's higher than it was at my house. So, I mean, I think that this sort of raises giant red flags to me that we need to start thinking about what we're going to need to do when all of these wells become contaminated, and how much is that going to cost? I mean, that's going to be a huge expense. And because I heard Greg say something about these can be blended. I think that that's a terrible idea. So we're going to blend it so you're just going
No.
to get a little bit of PFAS instead of
No.
55 parts per trillion. Like, that's a
No.
terrible, awful, horrible idea and harmful to our community to think about even doing that. I think, I mean, it seems to me that we would end up needing to put filtration systems on the whole system eventually. And that seems like that's not cheap.
No, and first off, believe me, the blending is an option that's offered by DEP. Oops, my lights went out.
Yep, mine did too.
That's an option by DEP to, if you have a well that's over, to blend it with other ones to get it below the 20. I assure you, we will not do that. My family drinks the water. I drink the water. My kids, my mom, my relatives, my uncles, people I know. We're not going to do that. That's the reason well 15 has been off since 2022. It had low levels, 3 and 5 single-digit numbers. When Tom's Way came about, we started realizing it's probably coming from Tom's Way. We turned it off. Blending is not an option for me or Wannacomet. The Wannacomet Water Commission is not going to allow the blending of the water. That Greg is just mentioning that because that is a potential option for us. we're not going to blend the water. That's why we're going to put a treatment system for well 15, and we're going to probably hook well 16 to it, even though the PFAS is not in well 16. We're going to treat the shallow aquifer wells and just make it so it can, if it needs to, treat 16 as well.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Carries.
Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for, the information so far. Question about the filter at the filtration system you want to put in. What do you
Yep.
do with the filters after they're done? We've been,
Well,
we
when
don't
they're
have much
done-
guidance yet. We're trying to figure out what to do
No.
with our little baby filters.
Right. So what's happening to us right now just happened to Marston Mills on the Cape. And I've spent a lot of time talking with the director of water over there. We have similar numbers, similar pumping situations. So when the canisters, when the carbon resin is maxed out, right, and you got to switch to your other filters, that resin is picked up by our hazardous waste company and is taken off island and disposed of under a hazardous waste manifest. So at Marston's Mills, they're doing that twice a year because of an iron and manganese problem that also clogs the filter. With us, our iron and manganese is very good. It's very low. It's non-existent. Talking with the design engineers of these treatment systems, and they have our sampling records. We're looking at probably changing those canisters once a year. So what that treatment system will look like is we'll have 2 or 3 canisters that are in operation and 2 or 3 adjacent to it. So they use an abundance of safety factors in this, and we look at the volume pumped and what can be treated. And months in advance before the first set of canisters is what we would call full of PFAS. It's turned off and switched to the other ones. It's sampled every month to make sure. Those canisters will be taken off, regenerated, or recycled, and we would put new material into those ones that were just emptied while we're using the other set. So it's a 2-set system, empty one under a hazardous waste manifest with somebody like a Clean Harbors that would deliver that to a facility that takes it. And then we would just keep redoing that until the plume is cleaned up.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What's the depth of do you think the wells out in Tom Nevers? Which well do most of the wells that have out there, where is that water coming from as far as the 3 steps that you?
Generally speaking, I'm not saying all private wells, but talking with local well drillers and the people that are installing that, the majority of the private wells across the island, whether it's Nantucket, Tom Nevers, Squam, they're probably in that upper aquifer. I think I know of very few that are actually, to 100 to 150 foot depth. The majority of those wells are usually in that upper aquifer.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead. From the board, right?
Yeah. Just about what is it gonna cost the town if we need to put filtration systems on these wells?
So I actually have a meeting tomorrow about that with the design engineers that are going to give us a ballpark figure of pricing, not ballpark, but, a really close estimate. For well 15, we're probably looking at a couple million bucks to build that treatment system. And talking with the Marston Mills person, it's in that $210,000 every time you have to change out that carbon resin.
Okay, thank you. I just want to welcome Andrew.
And that would be for the 2 wells, 15 and 16. If we had to do that at every other pump station, I guess you would just extrapolate that number out. We have 5 public water supply wells. If we have to treat, we treat.
That's significant. And then we might be at some point even private wells having more and more of them filter systems. Cost would be enormous. Thank you, Mark. We'll just I want to welcome Andrew. Hello.
Nope. Don't-
Anyway,
Mr. Chair, before we jump into public comment, would you like a brief update from Mr. Larson about the recent findings for the 21E investigation at two fairgrounds?
oh, yes, we're going to circle around. I was just kind of welcoming Andrew.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, but I guess he's mute or not. But
I think
so
Andrew's mic is down. Yeah.
let's do
Can you all
Mr.
hear me now?
Larson's update, and then we'll go to public comment.
Yeah, we can hear you, Andrew.
Oh, I think he just went off. Maybe start with Chuck and come back to Andrew.
Yeah, let's do Chuck. Well, we're just kind of, Andrew just got here, so let's hear Chuck and then we'll do public comment or public questions to everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would I be able to share my screen and would you be able to see it? Because we have the information from Mass DEP and we've compiled it and actually put it onto a map. And it would be, easier to talk about it because we have the results and we can actually talk about the individual well locations.
Let's listen here.
I admitted to my amateur skills at this, Chuck, prior to the meeting.
Chuck, if you just try and share, then I think we can accept on our end.
Okay, let me do that. More, I got whiteboard apps, capture the share. Okie dokie, let's try that. How does that look?
I can see it at home if that helps.
All right.
We can
Mr.
see it
Chair?
here, Chuck.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can you see it?
Yes, I guess.
Okay, so what I'm showing here is a map that was put together by Verdantis for Mass DEP to identify the site where they were doing the installation of the monitoring wells. And so that's what I'm showing here. Fairgrounds Road is across the top of the image, Old South Road down along the right edge, Tacoma Way along the left edge, Waite Drive toward the lower bottom, and then across the bottom is Amelia Drive. And within this boundary, so to speak, there are 12 monitoring wells that were installed. And those are shown by the yellow circles. And so with the information that we obtained from the report from Mass DEP today, and my understanding is we're going to try to have that information posted shortly if it's not already posted. And it's over 200 pages. It includes the full lab reports for the tests. And what I'm showing here are the groundwater testing results for the samples that were done December 16th and 17th. And what we see here is that, the concentrations are, just the highest concentration is just over 20 parts per trillion, which is the groundwater limit for the PFAS 6. And that's just behind 4FG, the police station. And then, the results for the other wells are less than that. 3 locations that are non-detect. And you can see that there is, not really a pattern to the results other than what we see toward the center here in the parking lot behind Plus, going down to Amelia Way, something, between the 10 and just above 20 range. The edge that's closest to Old South Road, the highest that was found is the monitoring well just to the east of Old South Road, closest to the water company at 10 nanograms per liter. Anything along the lower edge here, of course, right below the bottom of the image here is Tom's Way, and we saw concentrations that were in the hundreds. So there is nothing to really indicate that, there seems to be anything coming from this area toward, Tom's Way. And, this is, again, very preliminary information. This is just, 12 tests, 12 data points. Mass DEP is going to be making a lot more comments on this, but what we show here is, something that, doesn't seem to show much of a picture as it might relate to Tom's Way. The thing I will point out is that for Fairgrounds, the police station has a geothermal well system. And this result here at 22 nanograms per liter is right adjacent to one of those supply wells. And these wells are all in the 30, 40, 50 foot range, and they're in the upper aquifer. The supply wells and the injection wells that are over on this side of Nantucket Police Department are in that deeper aquifer that Mark has described, where his other wells for the water supply are. And I think one of the concerns that we might have here is that, given the depth of, what we're exchanging for water, for this geothermal system, we've got to be careful that we're not actually going to be spreading contamination into that deeper aquifer. And I bring that up only because with the airport and the results that they have from their geothermal system, which has wells that are at a similar depth, 130, 140, 150 feet deep, they actually tested the water, and they are discharging, water into that deeper aquifer with concentrations that are above the 20 nanograms per liter. And some of that was information that has been discussed, previously with the airport folks. But, we were talking about, that, protecting that deeper aquifer. So I'm only bringing that up because, this is some of the information that we're seeing on this diagram here, and there's probably a lot more that can be drawn out of this. But this is our first snapshot of what that looks like. Our consultant, TRC, is going to be going into this in more detail, looking at all the analytes that were tested, for these groundwater samples. They use the method 1633, which has 40 analytes. So there's a lot more to look at besides just these 6 PFAS compounds here. We'll be, trying to share more information in the future. And then Mass DEP hopes to have their final report with this round of testing completed by the end of this month. And of course, we'll be happy to make updates to the board on that. And we'll be posting that information online as well.
Wow. Wow. Questions from the board?
It's pretty horrifying to me that only 3 of them were non-detect. I don't think that's a win. I think that the federal government is saying 4 or lower, and those are, 1 is 2.4. I mean, that's terrible.
I mean,
It's
they're
awful.
They're less than 20, but they're still detectable. And we all know that those limits are they're going to change.
I believe that at the PFAS Action Group event, Dr. Graham Peasley said he's never met a good PFAS. So I really am kind of horrified that that pretty much all but 3 had some PFAS, and I think that we have a real problem.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you. So, let's open it up to public questions.
Go ahead.
We'll try to keep your comments to about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, this is Mira.
Who's next?
Okay, sorry, Mira Samir.
Yes.
Has to unmute, hold on.
Is she muted, or
Yeah.
go to the next person, then come back?
Aisha. Okay, Aisha.
Hi, thank you for all this information. This is really helpful. I appreciate all the work everyone's done. I had a couple questions with the I know that there's a UCMR. It's the unregulated contaminant. They do them every couple years. And I didn't know if we have participated or have results from that yet. There's 29 PFAS that are in the UCMR 5. It's the fifth one that they're doing. And I think the start date was 2023 and then it's up until 2025. Would we have results from that, from our aquifers and what we measured for those PFAS? And then I had another question about when we said that our town wells were non-detect, was that for just the PFAS 6, or were we testing like for larger numbers of PFAS? Were there more in that for with the methods? Did we use 537 or 533, EPA 533? Did we use any of those to measure beyond the PFAS 6 that the state measures? And if Mass DEP had been speaking to our water company or to the town about the upcoming new EPA standards and how they were expecting to meet those. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Can,
I think I can answer those if you want me to.
yeah, go ahead.
All right, so yeah, we are part of the UCMR. Aisha, we have been in touch actually yesterday with the lab. We're getting the bulk shipped to us. We will be sending off our UCMR 5 samples for all those extra analytes. Obviously, when we get those results, we can submit those and put them on our webpage. We do look for more than the PFAS 6. We look for, I think, 20. It's the one that looks like 29 or 40 different analytes. And when I say ND, there's NDs all the way down. Nothing detected, even in the other ones, this is the PFAS 6. And we have talked to EP about the regulation EPA's. The 4 is for PFOA and PFOS. Those are the only 2 that are 4. You got to remember that. Then they have an index where you add up a bunch of more of the compounds, 5 or 6 of the other compounds, and it's got to be lower than 1. We put all of our results into that, even if we don't have NDs, but you take these results we're getting from these new wells from DEP, which I'm sure they will do, and take a look at how it compares to the EPA regulation that's supposedly going to be rolling in 26 or 27. It's going to go into effect. I'm not saying we don't pay attention to those numbers now. They are numbers now. They are going to be enforceable in 2027, I think. But we are part of the UCMR 5, and we are looking for more than the PFAS 6.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
I will try Myra again, or Mira. You're muted if you're trying to speak.
It was an accident.
Okay, you're up.
You're up, Myra.
I said it was an accident.
Oh, for raising your hand?
Well, go on next.
Okay, yeah, okay. Oops. Megan.
Megan.
Hey there, how are you guys? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yes.
Excellent. I sent over a letter. I'm hoping you guys all got it. I'm sorry it was not within time for the packet. I'm hoping you got it so I don't have to kind of rehash it and waste your time. Hopefully you can all read it. It was a letter that I sent to the ZBA, the Select Board, and now the Board of Health. My concern is I think that this PFAS contamination needs to be of the highest priority, because if we don't have clean drinking water or we have contaminated water, it will not matter how many affordable housing units we have. It won't matter how many rotaries where the DPW is located, our island home, short-term rentals, none of that will matter. This really, I think it needs to be of highest priority, and I think the Board of Health could probably take the lead on this. I'm sorry if I come off a little bit frustrated, but I gotta tell you, I am frustrated. I found out from a CPC meeting that I am I am about less than 300 feet away from a well that has such high PFAS in it that it's now requiring municipal water to be put in and installed prior to other projects. And I kind of trusted the powers to be to look out for our community on this. And I wasn't notified, and so that's concerning to me. I get notified if my neighbor wants to put a shed on their property or a second driveway or something along those lines. And I think maybe this is a regulation that the Board of Health could work on with the Water Commission, where you notify the public if there is a well with high contamination. And I'm not just talking about the 20 parts per trillion. I think any contamination, you should let the neighbors know, because the only way to limit your exposure is knowing what your potential exposure is. And by not being notified, my ability to limit my exposure in my drinking water was taken away from me. And I try to go above and beyond to limit my exposure. I make sure my pans are PFAS free. I use the lowest amount of chemicals I possibly can. I was also concerned to hear at that CPC meeting that, and maybe Mark can clear this up for us, that a treatment system that's $50 to $60 million is what he said he was looking for. And I'm confused where the difference is. And that was when he was asked some questions. So I don't know if that's something that Mark can clear up for us, because $50 to $60 million for a treatment system, that's not a small number. And I'm wondering why that's not being made a priority over, no offense to our island home or the DPW location, but I think uncontaminated water needs to come before any of those projects if you're asking voters for money. So again, I'm not trying to come off frustrated or repeat things. I think Aisha asked a lot of the questions I wanted to ask as well, but I think there needs to be some type of regulation, some type of notification done, because we have contaminated water and this is bad. So I don't know if I packaged that all enough, but I'd love further discussion on it if possible.
Thank you. I got some of that.
Sure, I can answer those questions if you want.
Yeah, would you please, because it was a little mumbled for me.
Yeah, so.
I got just.
So for that 50 to 60 million was like a worst case scenario if I had to go out and treat every single well, which at this point in time, it's well 15. That's why I was saying earlier, if you take that 2 to 3 million and you times that by 5 or 6, you throw in a little bit of not fluff factor, but contingency. If we had to treat every single one of the wells for us to construct that, and later on, if the prices increase, as they always do, if we had to treat every one of our wells, we would probably be in that range. Right now, and I'm not saying it's good, at least it's only one that we have to deal with right now. And why it's really important that I focus, and Wanna gets this in on 15, because I think it can help not just us and our public drinking water supply, but maybe we can start to treat this plume wherever it's coming from. We don't know the extents on Tom's Way. We don't know where it's coming from, but at least if we can get this in and operating, we can start putting a dent in that stuff right now and try to limit the impact on everything else, including private wells in the area. So that's where that number came from. I probably should have been more clear in my statements during that meeting of that 50 to 60. They were asking me like worst case scenario type, what we would have to come up with.
Thank you.
And Malcolm, I think that we can address her second question as far as the notification of
Right.
neighbors, and that Andrew Shapiro was on and been talking through how we could do so better when we become aware of individual results.
Well, you want Andrew to talk about?
Yeah,
this?
Andrew.
Yeah, can you all hear me
discussed
now?
this at 2 or 3 past meetings.
Yeah,
so.
we did.
Andrew, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Can you all hear me? I
Yes.
take it you can't hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. This is my first Board of Health meeting. Happy to be here. Megan, thanks for your comment about private well testing. As Greg mentioned earlier, the town implemented regulations on January 1st, 2024 that private wells need to be sampled before real estate transactions before real estate transactions occur. And the regs are currently written up so that that's the seller's responsibility. So we are currently working to promote compliance with that regulation. I'm going to be reaching out to the Nantucket Realtor Board to make sure that all realtors are aware of these regulations. And we're going to do a handful of other public education campaigns to let people know about our new regulations. And I also understand your concern about PFAS in the water and making sure that those results are available. So I am currently thinking through ways to make that data available through some sort of online tool without also without risking identifying people's kind of private well sampling. So what I'm thinking right now is some sort of de-identified map where we take the results and basically plot like a 1 mile radius around sampling results that have been detected above the relevant drinking water standards, so 20 nanograms per liter at the moment. And the reason I'm picking that 1 mile radius is that Mass DEP currently has a recommendation that all private wells within 1 mile of a source test their water for PFAS. So hopefully that kind of achieves that balancing act of making that data publicly available while also, not revealing owners' kind of private information.
Thank you. I think that's a step forward from where we were. Go ahead, Meredith, and then we'll take another call.
I just don't feel that there is a need to de-identify. This is all public records. I also had watched that CPC meeting, so I looked up where the wells were that tested positive that Mass DEP found, and it was all of the testing that they did in Tom's Way, and then I'm imagining the other addresses are all not that far from there, so they must have been the homes that are in wells, and I guess, assume that the rest of them are on town water. I don't know. But I feel like this needs, it's not a taint on their property, it's a health hazard. Like, we shouldn't be hiding this. And I really strongly feel if Meg Rulish sent us that information, if other towns have regulations that information is in the file, like, why are we so special? Is it because our real estate market is so overdone or overinflated, so to speak, that we want to protect that? Or like, what's the big secret on Nantucket that this information can't be public, but in Stowe, Mass, and in Harvard, Mass, it's okay? Is it because they're not resort towns? Like, I just feel like other towns are doing it this way. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel and keep it all hidden? This is people's health. People get cancer because of this. People have fertility issues. People have thyroid issues. Kids, I mean, did we not learn anything from Woburn, Mass, when their wells were contaminated and all those children got leukemia and it got hidden and so it took years and years to come out? Like, we know that PFAS has at high levels, has a high potential of affecting our community where we all live and work. Like, why are we not putting this out there? I struggle with that.
Yeah, I think you're making good points. We've discussed this before, and I think Andrew is new, and I think we should give Andrew some time to work it out, and maybe he'll come back with an idea that's acceptable to the staff. And we have to find a balance, and I agree we have to find a balance. So I think we'll let Andrew do his job for a couple weeks, and then we'll bring him back and ask how he's doing and maybe make some suggestions.
Can I ask another question?
Please go right ahead.
So when you buy a home and you have a septic, you have to do a Title V, right? Inspection?
Yes.
And you have to, if you have a well, you have to have it tested for other stuff, not now it's PFAS, but it wasn't before. The Title V stuff is all public information, and I'm sure that the well results for everything else is public information. So like, we need to we all, except for, sorry, Andrew, except for you, we all live here. We all drink water from some part of the aquifer or shower in it, wash our clothes in it, wash our children in them, wash ourselves in this. So we really, I feel like it is our job to protect our community. We already know that it's in the aquifer.
Right.
We already know there, so.
I don't disagree with you. In some ways, I agree with you. But I think the staff had some issues with it. And I think in respect for them, I would like them to work through it and come back. And maybe they will move on to something different. I think that's the best thing to do. Your points are well taken, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. Okay, let's take one more public comment, and then we'll move on, because I think this has been very helpful. Very helpful for me.
Meg Rulli?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing all the wealth of information, and I know how hard everyone's working, coming together to protect our aquifer and our water. I just want to follow up about private well regulation 386.8 when properties transfer. Meredith just touched on it, and residents do not have the luxury of time to get Andrew up to speed. Quite honestly, this regulation was passed unanimously in September of 2023, and you had engineers working on this regulation 5 months leading up to the vote. It went into effect in January, and it's a year later, and we still don't have any answers. I've been coming to this board since, March, asking about it, and have gotten mixed messages. I thought it was all going in the public file, to find out in the fall that it wasn't. So I really urge the board again to take a leadership position, making sure people have access to information to protect their health. And quite honestly, as a resident of Tom's Way, I was surprised to hear about well 15 being offline in 2021, about the UMass study that found PFAS over on Bayberry Lane and Rugged Road, which led Mass DEP to our street 2 years later, and we were never notified. And we were drinking the water, and we just never had the option or the opportunity to take some extra steps to protect our health. The health department had all of this information with the street addresses. We don't need to know the person's name, but having an idea of the street is super helpful. And I did a report for the Board of Health about these 3 other towns and talked to their health directors. Many of these offices have one person running the office, and you have to call between certain hours to talk with them. It's like 1 hour every Tuesday or Thursday. They're very busy, but they were like, of course, this is public record. We put it in the file, and they even list the streets on their website where they require PFAS testing and water quality testing. They're both super important. And I really want to appreciate, send that out to Wannacomet Water. They really worked with Tom's Way and got us on town water very quickly, and have been very, great about telling us what is going on now that we're in this situation. Whereas, everybody else, I'm having to file FOIAs to find out what is even going on. It's helpful that you have all this information, but residents who can really benefit from it, we don't get it unless you're impacted and you start going to these meetings. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing what happens in the next couple months.
Thank you, and thank you for all.
Kerry's got his hand up.
I'll be very quick. First, I support what Meredith said. My other question is, how is the process of finding the sources of the PFAS proceeding? Because obviously, if we don't know where it's coming from, we kind of, we're chasing after it. Are we more knowledgeable about where the sources of the PFAS are?
I'm going to ask our project manager Chuck Larson to chime in, but I think the answer is we
Chuck?
are a little more confident now based on the assessments that's been going on for the past 3 years. I don't think it's perfect or guaranteed, but I think we're getting closer to understanding them. And I think, like I said, I'm the layperson in this, but the more we do, the more confusing it is. It's kind of like, you know, peeling back that onion. But I don't know if Mr. Lawson wants to say anything, but I do believe we've made some headway in identifying.
I'd appreciate it, Mr. Larson would speak. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, identifying a source is probably going to be one of the most difficult and time-consuming aspects of this work, and it's definitely something that Mass DEP has mentioned to us that we can evaluate contamination, identify locations of contamination, but identifying a source is our ultimate goal, but it might not happen. You might have contamination and you might not have an identified source. I think that's the reality that I understand now after talking to Mass DEP when they came and they were with us when we were doing the the well drilling. We had those conversations, and I think they're very clear that, hey, we're doing an evaluation, kind of a discovery, but we are not making any promises that we can identify a source at least right away. I wish I had a better way. I wish I had a better answer. I wish, as an engineer and a scientist, that I'd be able to say, hey, with certainty, this is going to be it. But I think that's the challenge that we're facing right now. And the key is to reduce the human exposure, to these chemicals and compounds when we find them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thought is, we are not an industrial complex here. We're 30 miles out to sea, so the industrial sources are very limited. That it seems that even with it, is there a way to work from the few places that we have that we know are industries that worked with products that contain PFAS long before we knew there was PFAS? Is there a way to kind of reverse check to see where it's coming from rather than trying to follow the water, which is much more fluid dynamics? Is not easy. So, but we don't have lots of factories and lots of places where PFAS was part of the daily life. We know the airport. There's very few other places. So, is there a way to kind of approach it from industry out rather than plume in?
So, yeah, I think that's some of the work consultants are doing, are building these catalogs of, products and what these, chemical signatures look like for different PFAS. And, this is a class of, tens of thousands of compounds. And yet we're just testing for 40. And we really, it's a very, very, complex problem. Andrew, maybe you've got, information to share because, this is certainly more that you have studied in the past as well. But, with the work we're doing with TRC, they do an awful lot of work with fingerprinting and trying to identify potential products, let alone then you might be able to work into sources. But some of the challenges with PFAS, once they get released in the environment, the chemical compositions can change some. So what gets spilled, but what you test, some distance away, it can be a different, set of PFAS. You've got precursors and transformations, and that's just some of the recent things that I've learned that make this, like how are we ever going to, figure this out? But Andrew, maybe there's, or Mr. Chair, you might want to ask Andrew if he might have anything to add to that, because I think that's an important item for people to try to understand that finding a source, is very challenging.
Let's see if Andrew has a question, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the airport as a potential source, firefighting foam, as we've all kind of talked about, carpeting, so anything that might have been involved with applying like waterproofing to carpeting. And it's definitely something we should continue to think about. Chuck, let's definitely get together and think about this soon.
Right. Okay, well, I want to thank Mark and everyone for their input. For Greg and and Chuck, I think I've learned a lot. I think we have, well, I'm not going to speak the obvious. We have a major problem, and it's not going to get better. And we've asked the staff to kind of look into how they can publicize some results better. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I'll we do offer PFAS testing through our department. So anyone who has concerns that's on a private well with their drinking water, PFAS testing's available in our office. Can pick up a kit anytime, and the samples go out between 7:30 and 9 on Tuesday mornings.
Okay,
So-
thank you. Rock, any questions, and we'll move on? Comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you all. We'll do this I would suggest twice a year, have kind of a Board of Health review, or even quarterly, whatever. Quarterly. We'll do it quarterly.
Sorry, can I ask a question? So we're not going to get another update? We're just going to do it quarterly and we're not going to know what's happening? I'm sorry. You know that this is my soapbox, and
I'll tell you what.
I would love to have like a little update about what we're going to do about when the houses sell and the testing, like next month, where are we? And the month after,
Well,
where are we?
I think we've asked Andrew and the staff and Rocky to look into looking back at their idea of not publicizing names. And I think they can come back next month and tell us about it. And then if there's something that's happening, then certainly I think the staff will put on the agenda to inform us. But we'll at least do a quarterly formal update of what's happening. Okay.
Yeah, and can I add one thing?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm actively working on implementation of these regulations, and so I will be reaching out to some folks like the Realtor Board, as I mentioned, and please feel free to email me, if you do want an update or have any questions.
Yeah. I mean, the staff will keep us up to date. We'll do it formally every quarter, and then we have Andrew now that this is his life and his function. All right. Okay. I don't know if we have a lot of information. We're going to talk about having a public hearing about large events in private homes through PEC's short-term rental regulations. We really don't have anything to work with right now, right? Rocky?
No, we published the notice, as we discussed last
So we
month.
published a notice,
Yes,
and so,
but we don't have any updated regulations that have been drafted, because we were waiting for the board to direct us on what they are
well,
interested in
I
having
think
done.
I think we talked last time to the attorney about him looking at other places that have similar regulations and seeing if he could draft something up in the short-term rental regulations.
I don't know if Mr. Corbo is on.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Aren't there some places on Nantucket that you have to get a permit? I know there's a place out in Tom Rivers where I live, they have a permit to have,
Right.
where they have those big weddings, they have a permit to have so many, like 3 or 4 in a certain amount of time for the whole summer. So are we talking about just generalized people letting their homes? That's all we're talking about?
Yeah, well, generalized, it gets very complicated. What we have potential use is through a person going beyond, say, accessory use of their short-term rental for
Okay.
a commercial activity.
Okay.
I think that's what we really need to discuss.
Isn't this being discussed by the ZBA?
Yes, it is. It is being discussed by the ZBA on a specific case.
Is there,
We would do it on a general basis.
is there a way to see what other like if the Vineyard is doing anything anywhere on the Cape, even like other resort, I mean, I know we are probably like one of the last places to put any regulations on STRs if we decide to do that at town meeting. Most places, most resort towns have, I think, put a lot of regulations in general. So I feel like maybe we don't reinvent the wheel. I think you're correct. Like there's probably places that have regulations on what is allowed for commercial use of a private home.
There are, as a matter of fact. So since what we can do, we've discussed this, we can open a public hearing and not close it until such time as we have more information. So I'm
Mr.
gonna,
Chair, Greg Corbo is available if you would like to hear
Yes.
from him.
Hi, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes, I'm on today for the purpose of speaking with the board about this subject. And what I was intending to do was to sort of give you a broad overview of what your options are. And then I was expecting that I would get feedback from you as to which direction you wanted to go in so that I could write up something more specific. To the question that came up, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's perfect. That'd be perfect. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So just to back up a small bit to the question that came up a moment ago, there are rules and regulations concerning having parties at commercial establishments or parties that are either open to the public or that are done at a venue in exchange for compensation. So in that case, you might need a tent permit, you might need an entertainment license, you might need an alcohol license. But what we're talking about here would be an event at a private home where it's not open to the public. Admission is not charged, but it is nonetheless a very large gathering that otherwise appears to be unregulated and sort of slips through the cracks in terms of what the town and really what the state regulates in terms of these types of gatherings. I did find that there are a few other places that do things like that. Most notably, the town of West Tisbury recently attempted a bylaw to regulate gatherings at private residences, but that bylaw was not approved at their town meeting. Other places like the town of Amherst, city of Boston, city of San Diego, for example, all have some variation on this theme of regulating events at private parties. Some of them call them house party regulations or guidelines, and they often focus on you know trying to prohibit alcohol service of alcohol to minors. But here, from our past discussions and my discussions with other town officials, I understand that there are issues here that sort of go beyond the general issues of having alcohol service. And, I understand that there are issues in terms of, parking on what could be very narrow or small streets. There are noise issues, there's trash removal issues. There could be sewer or septic implications of these large gatherings. And so, the issue has come up, what, if anything, can be done about this? And so, the way that I approached this was I see that there are three sort of broad options that the board could take. So the first option would be not to do anything special and try to enforce existing regulations. So, for example, the current short-term rental regulations specifically address some of these issues in terms of parking and noise and overcrowding and things like that. And so we could look at enforcement of that regulation through the assessment of fines or suspending or revoking short-term rental registrations. In addition, the town has a noise bylaw that prohibits noise being audible within 100 feet of the property line after 10 p.m. And the town also has an anti-light pollution bylaw. The police have certain enforcement mechanisms by which they can, monitor underage drinking and things like that. So, one way to go would be to work with staff to enforce existing regulations. Another way to go would be to put something into the short-term rental regulations to only address those. So these would be private homes that are subject to the short-term rental regulation, and there would be limitations or requirements as to whether and to what extent they can have gatherings. And in that amendment to the regulation, we could address things like parking, number of occupants that can be on the premises, noise, trash disposal, requiring that they have porta potties. And we can do that either through, prohibiting them outright and saying that if you have a residential short-term rental, you cannot have more than a certain number of persons on the property at any one time. Or you can do it through the issuance of a permit and say, you can have a party, and we define a party as being more than a certain number of people. But in order to get that permit, you have to come to us with a plan, and there's got to be a parking plan and a refuse plan. Maybe you'll require that people have police details, if these events might be disruptive. So these are all things that we could put into the regulation, either through prohibiting them altogether or by having some type of permitting requirement. The third option here is a sort of take on the previous one, and that is to expand this beyond just short-term rentals and have these same regulations for any parties in private residences that are over a certain size, have to come to the Board of Health and get a permit. And again, we could require those owners to, provide the same type of information and be subject to the same types of requirements and limitations. And, all of these issues that I've mentioned, whether it's congestion in parking, noise, light pollution, garbage and septic disposal, these are all things that are within the Board of Health's gambit of protection of public health, safety, and welfare. And so, those are the sort of, that's the overview. And, I guess what I thought was maybe the board would give me direction as to sort of which of those options you'd like to pursue. And then, I could follow up with you at the next meeting, with a draft of some suggestions to implement which of the ideas you like.
I was watching the Board of Health meeting, but it's over. Well, it's not the.
What was that? Yeah. All right. Okay, Greg, thank you very much. I think what I'm going to do is open the public hearing. We can keep it going as long as we want to, because we may want some public's input on this. So this public hearing is now open. Actually, the board have any comments on this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we talking about specifically short-term rentals? What about a family who their daughter's getting married?
See, I think-
you're gonna have to go downtown and get a
No, I think this is
permit and get stuff from the
This
police
is-
department.
That'd be going to Greg's option 3, which I think would be a can of worms that would just.
Yeah, I don't think you have the right to tell someone that they can't.
I would, if the board agrees with me, just cross out item 3, because that was essentially regulating, my 50th wedding anniversary 3 years ago.
Right.
I
You have
had
to have
people
3
in the back-
policemen.
I had a lot of people in my backyard for 2 hours.
I think that if it's your primary residence, it's different than if it's rented out commercially. Because I think that people tend to know their neighbors or alert. I mean, we've heard over and over again at town meetings and about how if a neighbor was having a party and said, hey, my daughter's getting married in our backyard.
Right.
Here's a bottle of wine. We're really sorry if we're loud tonight.
Right.
I think that is very different than I rented my house out for a giant wedding and I'm not there. And these people don't know my neighbors and don't necessarily maybe have the same respect for the neighborhood as you would if it was your house. I've had neighbors come and say, hey, it's my birthday, we're having a party. I hope we're not loud, and moved everyone to the side of their house that was not facing my children's bedroom, which was super respectful and nice, and that was great.
That's right. That's why I don't think we need to get into those weeds. We need to get in the fact of people who are essentially renting properties as a commercial opportunity.
Right, just to do that, yeah.
Just to
you're
do
right.
that. So this is more, and I think, in my opinion, you may disagree with me, and Carrie, raise your hand. The option one of existing policy is kind of, is not that specific.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think we may not get there, but I think we should explore Greg's option two and see what we can come up with. And we may or not ultimately approve it or recommend it. So
Right.
I think it's worth discussing. And the feedback I'm getting from the citizens out there is they want us to look at this, and I think it's our obligation to do that.
Right.
I would love to see something in about alerting abutters. I just am thinking if you're getting a permit, because I think Megan said earlier, like if you put a shed up, you have to alert your butters. If you cut down a tree, you have to alert your butters. So if you're going to have rent out your house for a big event,
Yes.
you probably should be alerting your abutters, because I think that's the respectful thing to do when you live in a community.
Carrie, do you have comments?
One, just, following up with what Meredith just said, I mean, part of it is when a short-term rental is that the owner of the house may not know the short-term renter is going to throw a party. So, there is that issue of, I own the house. I have a post on Airbnb. Someone's going to rent it, and I don't know if they're throwing a party or not, unless somehow we make that notification of if you are. That the owner has to notify them what the rules are of the island if we implement rules, because kind of like they're just going to say I didn't know. They're not residents. They're not people who are here on a daily basis. And I guess the other would be just the other thought. And again, I agree about number 3 would be to a certain extent unfair, but the flip side is gigantic events can be held on private private house where the person lives. And are we equipped? Do we have existing regulations to address those kind of issues, which may not be very often, but that is obviously something that's out there right now. So that was just my other thought about that. But number 2 seems to be, I agree with it. But again, the owner of the house who registers doesn't necessarily know what the people he's renting to are going to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we should explore too. We may find that that's
Right.
just too complicated to go, or we'll see.
Isn't it the responsibility of the homeowner to, I guess if I was renting out my house, which I don't, I would want to know if there was going to be a big event there. I think people would have contacted
Yeah, I would think so.
caterers, they would have had to get a pouring license, I believe. I mean, there are other things that need to happen if someone's having an event at a private residence that it's not,
Yeah.
they don't just say it's Friday night, let's have some people
It's
over.
the
This is more
difference
than
is
that.
I'm renting it and I'm having a party, or I own it and I'm renting it out for a party.
Right.
And that's what the issue seems to be.
Yeah.
People. So I think, Greg, we're looking more towards you exploring number 2. I see a couple hands up. We'll take a couple comments from the public and then move on. And then the public hearing I'll ask you to extend it.
Okay, ready? It's Charity Benz.
Jared, are you there? Are you muted?
Yeah, I'm asking you to unmute, Charity, if you are muted.
I don't.
This is not user error on my part,
All
I
right,
believe.
well, she'll have opportunity. Yeah. Okay, so.
Oh, looks like.
Mr. Carvo, I think the consensus is for you to explore your option 2.
Okay, great. And it sounds like within option 2, you're not thinking of saying that all parties are prohibited, but rather you'd like to have some sort of option where, the owner and the guests together can apply for a permit to be allowed to have a party.
I don't agree with that at all.
You know?
No. If my daughters are getting married, you mean you're trying to tell me I have to go down and get a permit?
No, this would be if you're short-term rental.
Oh, you're talking about short-term
Yeah,
rentals.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The question is, I think we should explore the 2 options, one of permitting, which of course makes more complexity for the staff, or
Okay.
the other option is just one sentence, you can't do it.
Okay.
So,
I have one more comment.
Yeah.
I think that as we explore option 2, I would like to see what regulations are already in place that prevent some of these things. I think some of them are, there's a very strict noise ordinance. At 10:15 or whatever it is, the cops can come. I'm sure there is a parking on somebody else's property or blocking a street ordinance. And I think some of these things may already be regulated and need to be pulled together into one thing that would prevent these events from happening.
most of the things actually are regulated. It's a matter of, in an August day, to actually get it enforced.
That's right. And so maybe Greg could pull that all together and show us how maybe that could work.
Okay, did you get that?
Yes, I can. I can fold that in, and you're correct. I mean, there are things that are currently in place. The noise bylaw is a perfect example of that. Under the current noise bylaw, you cannot create any unreasonable noise through amplified sound or boisterous activity between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. the next day, and that you have a sort of 100 feet buffer between your property line and where that can be heard from. So yes, that's an enforcement option. As I said before, that the town has this nuisance lighting bylaw that might be put into effect here. It's my understanding that the town has a permitting requirement if you want to put up a tent in your yard. So that's something that would work. Certainly if you were hiring a caterer for this party, then the caterer would need to have a caterer's license. I'd have to check on the police regulations about the parking issue. But that is certainly, something that is within the authority of the select board and the police chief to, put up no parking zones in certain places. So yes, there is a combination of other laws that could possibly be used, but it's less direct. And I think that the benefit of doing it this way is that there's notice. And, one of the things that we would put in this regulation is that it's incumbent on the owner to put something in the posted house rules that says, no persons over this certain amount are allowed on the property, unless you get a permit from the Board of Health. And, through that, you could then mandate, that if it's a large party, that they have a police detail or that they have enough on-site parking to accommodate the number of guests that they're going to have. And it's just, in my opinion, it's a more focused enforcement tool that, hopefully gets people's attention in a more direct way.
It's more focused, and like the noise law actually kicks in at 10, which means you can have the drum playing loud at 8 o'clock, and that's, your neighbor is not going to particularly like that. So we'll move on. He'll explore that, and he'll do two. And so I need a vote to continue the public hearing. Someone make the motion, please.
Motion to continue the public
Do we
hearing.
hear a second? All in favor, Carrie?
Aye.
Ann? Meredith?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Chairman says aye, so we'll do this again next week. Next week, oh God. Next month. Six Guam Road, release of betterment lien.
Yes, so this is actually a series of betterment loan-related agenda items coming up here. So this first one is a notification that the loan has been paid off, and they provided a copy of the bill and the warrant, but it requires board approval to
Right.
Ensure that we can remove the lien.
Do I hear a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor of release of the betterment lien of Six Guam? Say aye.
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ann? Chairman says aye. We have to do roll calls when everyone's not here. 28 Tennessee, loan request for septic repair.
This is a loan request for septic repair. It's in the Nantucket Harbor area. It's a failed system. They're installing an IA system. The loan amount is $89,117.
Does this
What
come
about Los
under,
Angeles?
does this come under year-round people, summer people, or these loans?
These are, this one is not a primary residence,
A what?
not a primary residence on
Not a primary residence?
Nantucket, correct, yeah. So it's
So
not a
they don't,
resident,
what do they
not,
get, half or something?
That's right. It could be
Correct.
either. It could be either, and it's 50% for those that are,
Okay.
this is not their primary home.
All right.
Any other comments, motions? Approve the loan request, do I hear a motion?
Yeah.
For
Make a
28
motion.
Tennessee?
Make a motion to approve the loan request for 50%.
I hear a motion from Carrie, do I hear a second? Second. Carrie, all in favor, Carrie?
Yes. Aye.
Ann?
Yes.
Jim?
Me? Aye.
Meredith?
It just, was that 50%, did you say?
Yes.
50%.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
It's
Aye.
Yeah, yes, he said 50%, aye.
Right.
Chairman says aye, that's approved. 48 Hummock Pond Road, this is, we have two things. What, can you explain those to me?
So initially, there was a loan that was approved back in May. And at that time, they anticipated using the existing septic tank, but due to its age, they were unable to do so. And so the amount needed for the loan has increased. And that is what the request is for, is to remove the first one, retract the first one and approve the second one. The second one's total amount is, it's originally $8,500, and it's gonna be $40,825.
But
What's that
I-
connected to sewer?
I got a question here. It says septic loan request connect to sewer. We don't give them a loan to connect to sewers?
Yeah. Sorry.
Huh?
Yeah, we go from septic to sewer.
We
do.
can, yes.
We've done that.
Yeah.
Oh, we do?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
We've
All
done
right.
that in the
Yep.
past.
Okay.
So do I have a motion to approve retraction of the original loan? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, Carrie?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes.
Chairman says aye. Do I hear a motion to approve the new loan for 48 Hammock Pond
No,
Road?
wait a minute. I got a question here. You're saying that he was going to put in a septic system. Now he doesn't need the money for the septic system. But now he wants to tie into the water, so we're going to give him the septic tank money so we can tie into the sewer?
Sorry. Yeah,
No,
think
we
there
don't
was-
do that.
we do septic to sewer. It's in the Hummock Pond watershed, and they're tying into town sewer and abandoning the septic system.
Okay.
We've done that before.
All
Yeah,
right,
it's
okay,
in our
all right.
our sewers regulation to connect.
Okay.
And again,
Is
this would be 50% because it's not their primary residence. Am I correct on that? They're Charleston, Massachusetts.
That's correct.
That's correct, so it'd be for
Yeah,
50%.
it's not a primary residence,
So
right?
we're approving 50%
Huh?
of how much it costs to connect to the sewer system.
Yes.
Yes. Do I hear a motion as such?
Yeah, make a motion to fund at 50% the sewer connection for 48 Hummock Pond Road.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, Carrie?
Yes, aye.
Meredith?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And the chairman says aye. 4 Main Avenue septic loan request.
So this is another failed septic system. Loan is for $72,202.50, also for an IA system, which is required. Yeah,
Any
Does
questions?
this say second home?
this is,
Washington DC based.
yeah, Washington DC, yes, Washington DC based.
Year-round person?
No.
No. Do I hear a motion? Question?
I hope to approve the loan.
Do I hear a
50%.
50%. Do I hear a second?
Can I ask a question? Isn't
Please, go ahead.
for Maine, isn't that over, is that no over the bridge?
Connecticut.
Yeah, it's Mattocket. Where in Mattocket?
They're in watershed A, so they are closer to the harbor, closer to the harbor than I am.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so this is the one that was going to put in a tight tank, and they came, and there was, what do you say, legal
Oh, yes.
stuff involved. And the board approved the variance for them to be able to install an IA back a few months ago. I don't have the exact date,
I remember.
but,
Right.
so this is that property.
Right.
Okay.
So,
So we've approved the IA.
correct.
Yes.
And did we put a deed restriction or anything on that? I don't remember. I mean, I know we had lots of varying discussion, but did we put a deed restriction on that about number of bedrooms or anything? Just offhand?
I'd have to look into that. That's certainly something that could be done. I'm sure it's an undersized lot that was permitted for more bedrooms than would be permitted now, and,
We dealt with that in
but-
permanent then.
Yeah.
This is the loan.
Loan.
yeah, right,
We
right,
can't go back.
right.
Right, no, we can't go back, correct. Just,
Right.
it's a question.
Now, that wouldn't be appropriate. We can approve or disapprove the 50% loan. That's what we can do right now. And I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I hear a motion. All in favor? Ann? Jim?
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Chairman says aye. 34 Hinsdale Avenue, that we had a public hearing, and the public hearing is still open because we wanted a feedback, a report, if I recall.
So the document that I have indicates from Visco Pumping that that the septic tank was pumped out on January the 7th.
Right.
And I don't have any other update beyond that.
Right, but that was it. We kept the hearing open because we requested the septic be pumped.
Can I ask a question?
So you can do
'Cause
anything.
didn't,
So didn't we leave it open because we wanted to see the septic system
Was pumped.
was pumped?
That's what and it has been pumped.
Okay, all right.
did the sale go through and do they have a well? So did they have was the water tested?
I don't know if
Right.
if the sale went through.
Okay.
I haven't seen any information.
It was advertised, I mean, there was a.
You saw that it was
Yes,
to the land bank.
the land,
Okay.
So.
Do we
so-
know who paid for it?
For the,
land bank.
The land
for the
bank.
property?
Huh?
Pumping? I don't know.
Oh, for the pumping.
I don't care.
It
who
doesn't
paid-
matter?
I don't care who paid for it as long as
Okay,
it got pumped.
all right.
I would like to know if the PFAS, if the water was tested for PFAS since there was a sale. And that's in our regulations if it has a well.
We'll have to find out. I don't know if you can do that.
I believe it's an attorney for the previous owner, if you'd like to hear them,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Vaughter.
Good afternoon. My name's Tom Vaughter. I represent Robert Jepson. So the sale has not gone through. This is a case that there was an occupant at the property, and the occupant was required by the board to remediate some mold in the room that is being occupied by this person, Tim Thompson. And I don't believe that was done. What was done, Bob Jepson agreed to have it pumped. We agreed that also he had to replace a door, which a door was replaced, and somebody from the board went out and checked it. And so that was good. From my perspective, the first time I'm hearing anything about a well being needing to be checked or not checked. But that was not part of the conversation last time. And if that's something that needs to be addressed, then that it's not part of the order of corrections or that which needs to be done. So whether that's a different process, that I don't know. But
Yeah, that's not part of the order. That's just the standard regulation of sale. Well needs to be tested at the time of sale.
So I assume that would be done at the time of the sale, but the sale has not happened at this point.
It can be
That would
done
usually be the responsibility of
of the seller.
real estate agent to assure that that's done.
And that test is good for a year, if I remember right, when a PFAS testing is done by a seller, that result is held good for a year. So, it should be done.
Okay. But that's not part of the corrective order.
No,
From my understanding, the corrective order has been complied with. And so whether that can now
This is
be
part of the sale.
right, but not part of the corrective order about which the hearing was held.
Correct.
So I guess from my perspective, if the corrective order is deemed to be satisfied, then that the board indicates that it's satisfied. And then obviously, if there are other things that need to be complied with, then I'll make sure that happens.
Right. So, Rocky, they've done all we've asked?
Except for the mold remediation is still
So
pending, and I think that was part of the corrective order.
It was part of the corrective order, and it's my understanding the Board of Health issued a order that the occupant, Tim Thompson, correct it. And as of today, this date, he has not.
Right. That was part of the order. So it's not complete yet.
Right.
So we'll leave the hearing open.
Just leave it open.
We'll just leave the hearing open until that's done.
Yeah.
So I need officially a vote to continue the hearing.
I make a motion that we leave it open.
Second.
Second. All in favor of continuing the hearing until all is corrected? Jim?
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Ann?
Yeah.
Malcolm votes aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Rocky, you're on.
Yes, so I will start with, I guess, short-term rental, since that topic came up during this meeting. Just an update that there are 794 active short-term rental permits that have been issued so far. We have, as I mentioned last month, we have worked through the backlog, so there is nothing really pending. It's just small numbers that are continuing to apply for the permit based on whether or not they're going to rent their property as a short-term rental this coming season. We also have been working with the contractor, GovOS, to kind of iron out the scraping of websites, because we monitor the websites, the realtor websites, to ensure that those properties that are listed as short-term rentals actually have a short-term rental agreement. So that's going to include outreach on our part to those that we believe are renting as a short-term rental, that they comply and get the permit. Yesterday, after conferring with the chair, after comparing with chair, I represented the Board of Health's comments on the Surfside Crossing development that occurred at the ZBA meeting yesterday. Lots of input. A lot of the comments that were made by this board were addressed. I think the one that was not, for instance, the fire chief was there and was able to talk about access points, is something we talked about. There was also a response to the Board of Health's comments that came from the seller's representative, Mr. Bracken. And I forwarded that report, I think, to all board members here when I received them last week. The one, I think, topic that did not come up in any other comments was the issue of getting an independent consultant to examine the effect on private wells of the storm runoff or the storm runoff system that's being proposed. And that feedback was provided to ZBA. They have until February 21st, I believe, before they have to close or make the recommendation as to whether or not they're going to issue the permit. So unless you have any specific questions about that, that is what occurred yesterday. And I apologize to Ann again on this one. Sanctity, that gentleman, Mr. Hinman, did reach out to me. I failed to put him on the agenda. He was willing to present tonight. But I assured him that I would put him on the next agenda so he can provide an update on the facilities or the improvement in the facilities at the Sankaty camp. So he will be on, yes, probably your first agenda item next month. The mentioned during the select board meeting, I believe yesterday, the state is holding hearings. Mass Wildlife is holding hearings on January 23rd, two of them at 1:30 and 6 p.m. That is looking at expanding deer hunting season to January, the entire month of January. Primitive methods. Those that are involved at the state are very aware of what occurred in 2005. I think they have some very good suggestions on how it will be different this time. So primitive hunting is muzzle loading and/or bow and arrow type of hunting. Again, that has been posted online, or will be posted soon online at the town's website, as well as it's already posted at the state for Mass Wildlife.
It wouldn't be for this year.
No, this year's passed. Some of the other, so this includes Martha's Vineyards as well, the communities there, and they're looking at 2027. That is what, I can't anticipate what they are looking at, but that is what's being proposed from the state representatives, but that I believe is what the other communities are targeting. That is probably when it'll occur, but I guess it's a possibility it could happen in 2026 as well. There was an issue that arose recently around HIPAA compliant applications or apps for phones that could be used to conduct directly observed therapy treatment in cases of tuberculosis. So we did have a case, I believe it was last year. And so directly observed therapy is incredibly resource intensive because it requires a nurse or a representative to actually go to their house and watch them take the medication. But it is also acceptable to use electronic methods. So that could be a phone app, that could be a computer terminal that you're looking at, so that you can actually much more effectively speak to that person and watch them take the medication. And that is something that has been accepted at CDC and at the State Health Department, has done in many other areas. And so the issue is around what tools can be used that ensure compliance around privacy for these apps that are being used. So there are a couple of products out there. The state has in the past deferred to the local health departments and the local boards of health as to what should be used. And so we've been communicating with the regional epidemiologist who in Martha's Vineyard is part of the Public Health Consortium that we are part of to try and decide what tool would be best and consistently used in the islands. And it may require a letter of support from the Board of Health because not all counties and towns are subject to HIPAA. So HIPAA is really if you're billing for services, and we don't bill for clinical services here. So in the absence of direct guidance from the state, we would have to decide on our own with the support of the board what we could potentially use. And also in support of the kind of the regional epidemiologist wanting to obtain access to syndromic surveillance data. So syndromic surveillance data it's hospital emergency room data. So there's a large database called BioSense that's run at CDC. And so many emergency departments collect this data. So it's de-identified, so it's a syndrome. So for instance, if you have an influenza-like illness, you might have a cough and headache, fever. You have several symptoms that fit into the syndrome. And so without identifying the person, if you identify somebody with that syndrome and then you start identifying others by looking at these medical records that you have a number of syndromes that are similar, then that's kind of an advanced warning system, both locally and to the state as to what could be going on if we're having a big flu influx at that time. So currently, our regional epi does not have access to that syndromic data for Nantucket. So we're trying to obtain that. So again, might be something that we'll be looking for support from the Board of Health to try and get it if we're struggling.
Let us know what we can do.
Will do. And that is all I have, unless you have questions.
Can I ask a quick question? Sure. Are you seeing a lot of influenza? Do you guys have any information on that? Because I anecdotally am seeing a lot, and I didn't know what sort of the status was on the island.
So we are seeing around 8 cases, it seems like, a week, and it has been increasing. I think there's 121 cases confirmed on the island so far this season. And we started looking at whether or not we could find them, those individuals, in the vaccination database to see if these were vaccinated people or if they're not. So we are hearing anecdotally that some of these people have actually gotten the vaccine that are also coming down with flu. I think the efficacy this year was not great. It was about 40%. So you could still get the flu shot and still get the flu. So, but we do have some that have never been vaccinated, at least according to records that we have available to us.
No, that's also what I'm seeing is people that have had the flu shot and are still getting the flu, and I'm just seeing a lot. I guess I probably do this time of year.
Are they really sick? Or, I mean, because I think is that not the idea that maybe it won't prevent it, but it will keep you from becoming terribly ill?
Are they hospitalized? No. Are they feeling really miserable? Yes. I think maybe it is providing some, but it's probably every year I feel this way, but yeah.
Yeah, that has been true in the past as well. Just that it has lessened the systems. It lessens the system in some cases, but again, there's no hard and fast rule that it's going to do it every time. That's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Carrie. Meeting's over?
No.
Carrie?
Yeah, just got two quick things. One having to do with short-term rentals, and this actually may impact, and my question was triggered by my thought about Andrew. But the realtors, I talked with 2 realtors in December who claimed that they had no knowledge of the regulation about, PFAS testing for wells. Now, I don't know if they were just playing dumb or, truly didn't know. So, what, how do we? Is this a training where at least we get people that they have to attend and they sign off saying yes, I attended? I mean, just something, because it struck me because these are 2 also, they're good people. So that was about short-term rental. And then for the Surfside Crossing, I did notice on Don Bracken's plan that, one of our points of discussion was the wastewater treatment location. And he had indicated, well, they can move it 100 feet or something like that. Doesn't necessarily solve the issue, but that's why I think we really would like to have an independent consultant look at this. I mean, they can keep modifying, they'll just keep modifying and saying, we'll put it here. And it's outside the 100-foot zone, but it doesn't mean that it's better.
Yeah, the recommendation didn't change, Gary, that for the independent consultant that was put out there, regardless of the response that was provided by Mr. Bracken. Again, this is in ZBA's court now at this point. And as far as your other question, Andrew, do you want to answer? I know you and I had discussions about notification systems and how we might be able to do that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I am planning to go to a number of realtor offices and make sure that they're aware of the regulations. I'm also working on some code that will be able to pull real estate listings from publicly available databases. And we're going to plan to reach out to listings that are online and hopefully make them aware of the regulations. And I think that's really going to be helpful to catch them before the sale occurs, because the requirement currently is that the testing occurs before the sale. So we have a few things working.
Okay, thank you.
My sense, having just sold a house, is that they're pretty aware of regulations that have to be met prior to the closing. So it sounds to me that that we haven't notified them well enough. Not that they sort of ignored it, but that they may not be fully aware. Is that what you were thinking, Carrie?
Yeah, and the other thing would just be that, in theory, that this should be part of the closing list, as you're going through a contract, and then there's those lists that come up of things that got to be done and by whom. This should be on that list. So even if the realtor did forget or didn't, quite, that, the lawyer, other people can see that has this been done. It kind of hangs out there as this thing that's got to get done, but I don't think it's got a place where it's got a little check mark next to it that it is done.
Yeah, I think you're talking about that disclosure statement that has to be signed by both buyer and seller at time of sale.
Maybe we need to do a little bit of a training for the realtors and the attorneys.
Yeah, so I think that is part of the plan, and I think what Andrew was mentioning was, we've even talked about doing some sort of automated way to look at these websites to see basically all listings that will then trigger either whether that be a direct email, because we have their email addresses, to the listing agent to say, hey, just a reminder that this policy, this regulation is in place. And it is required by the town. And so there's a couple of different ways. I think that there's many ways to try and reach out to people, and sometimes it takes more than one to be able to kind of get that point across or get the intended work done.
Okay. Thank you.
Andrew, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'll just add that I want to focus on buyer's agents as well, because the buyer has more incentive to get the well testing done, even though it's the responsibility of the seller. So we're going to try to make buyer's agents aware as well.
Thank you.
That's all we have, unless you have any other questions for us.
No, I guess.
No, one minute.
You're in the meeting, right?
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I have a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, second.
Second.
Carrie,
Yes.
Meredith,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and yes.
Okay. We're good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.